Hey real estate agents, welcome to Making a Smarter Agent, your program to find out all the tips and trends as told by the great ones in real estate. What's a great one? Someone that's able to make money and still keep their head on straight. Let's face it, this is a tough business. We interview tough people who seem to make it look easy. Well, hey everyone, and welcome to Making a Smarter Agent. This is the weekly podcast where I interview people in real estate about real estate. It's usually successful agents that are able to make the top 1% of what is going on in the industry. Today I've got a special guest. His name is Steve Fishman. He's built a career finding, flipping, and selling homes, and he's got this great methodology for doing so. He's originally from Boston. He's a pretty interesting guy, new friend. Steve, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. So first of all, give us just a little bit of the history of you. How did you get started? You know, give me just the Cliff Notes.
Cliff Notes, I kind of fell into real estate development, to be honest with you. I went to school and got my master's in public affairs. Thought I wanted to be a public servant. And when I got out, actually halfway through, I realized that I wanted to work for myself. And when I got out of school, I just started renovating stuff for a brother-in-law who had a project and he needed a project manager. He says, "You want to project manage this?" And I said, "Sure." Got my builder's license and have been doing it ever since.
Sure. And what year was this?
1996.
96. Okay, so you've been at it for a long time, and that is, there's a lot of people that seem to jump into the business. I've got a book right behind you called "Flip: How to Find, Fix, and Sell." I'm getting a lot of that out there, and as a real estate agent, I avoid those folks like the plague because most aren't doing anything. This is your business.
This is my business. I don't invest.
Yeah.
I'm strictly flipper. I've never invested. I mean, I actually have had a couple projects, but then they've turned into flips.
Okay.
So when I say that I had a warehouse, and the warehouse, wasn't really making any money, so I said to my wife, who's a finance person, I said, "How do we reverse engineer this?"
Okay.
And she says, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, if someone's willing to pay $8 a square foot, what would they pay for if they put down a 20% deposit and then finance the rest? What would that work out to be?" Mm-hmm. So she said about $125 a square foot. So I said, okay, so let's take the project that we bought. We bought it at like $40 a square foot. It was a 45,000 square foot warehouse.
Okay.
I said, let's chop it up like a salami. If you want 1,000 square feet, it's $125 a square foot, 125,000. So I brought it to my partner, and I said, "You want to sell this thing at $125 a square foot?" He says, "How?" I told him about my reverse engineering, and he says, "Okay, done." Sold it out in 6 months.
So you sold it. So it was almost like a cooperative at that point. It was a bunch of tenants that were buying into it.
It wasn't tenants. It was buyers and buyers.
And buyers that were buying it.
So I built it out. That was really, I could have rented it out to all these small little guys, but the build out was the cost. So that's why we got people to say, they just saw it and said, "I want 1,000 square feet." We had some guy buy 3,000 square feet. Like I said, we cut it up like a salami and just sold off what you needed.
Sure. And that was the first one and only warehouse that you did.
We looked for others, but we couldn't find them. So
yeah.
Then the next project came around was a hotel condo.
Mm-hmm.
So we did the same thing. I bought a whole hotel, and we sold off each individual room. When you weren't using it, we would rent it for you, and you get a share of the profits from that.
I see. But at what point did your focus turn primarily to houses?
It's always been. I mean, those were just kind of side projects. I mean, I bought the hotel to flip it. I didn't buy that to ever run it. The only one I bought to run was the warehouse, and that didn't work out. So then I flipped it.
Okay.
In pieces.
Good. So, and in your career, how many properties have you flipped?
Probably 100 more than 100.
Yeah.
100 to 200.
100 to 2. Okay, that's a big range. Well,
Yeah, 100 to 200.
But when we had lunch the other day, it was a great lunch.
Well, the reason why I say that is because that hotel was 136 units.
Got it. Okay, so it
it's-
depends upon how you
how
count
I count
the
it and stuff
count
like
the
that.
whole thing.
But in single-family homes and stuff like that, when I first came down to Florida 4.5 years ago, I did a lot of foreclosures. I flipped 25 in a year.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's all over the place in terms of how many I've actually done. I don't know. I haven't really sat down and thought about it.
Got it. No worries. This podcast is primarily for people in sales. Obviously, my target is real estate agents across the United States. And a lot of them would say, wow, I want to meet this guy, Steve, or people like him. Can you talk to me a little bit about the characteristics of the brokers that you've worked with, the things that you liked, and conversely, the things that you didn't like? I know you weren't expecting that question, so we could just ad-lib here.
No, that's fine. One of the things that as a developer, really don't like is when a broker tries to tell me what I can do with the property. If they introduce me to a property, I just kind of want them to sit back and not tell me anything, because I don't want any of their ideas or things. I really want to absorb it first and come up with my own basis, and then I'm happy to hear. But I really don't like when they're giving me the hard sell. Oh, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. I'm not for me, the hard sell is a turnoff. Sure.
It's good piece of advice. So agents listening, the soft sell speaks louder than the hard sell.
For
basically,
me,
yeah.
For me, I mean, I don't get pressured. It's all based on, buying it low enough that I can make money on the back end.
Okay.
And the brokers I liked working with know their back end numbers.
Sure.
So if I say to them, how much is this house worth at the back end? Meaning, after I renovate it and I do all this stuff, how much am I going to be able to get on this on the back end? Mm-hmm. And I don't rely on them solely, but the better brokers are the ones that know what they're talking about.
Okay. You moved down. We're going to bounce around a little bit here, but you're from Boston.
Correct.
Your voice says it all. You're a Red Sox fan, which is great. You moved down to Florida not too long ago.
Correct.
And you immediately went into the business. You're now doing this with a new variable within country clubs, where I live and work as well.
Correct.
Was that a leap for you? Was that a natural step in your career, or did you find that this was a stretch for you at some point?
I didn't find it as a stretch. My strategy is to buy low and sell low, and there were some properties in these communities that you could buy low enough that I thought that I had enough margins on them. You might sit on them longer because country clubs, depending where and how much, you're going to sit longer, but the margins seem to have been there.
Sure.
So it wasn't a stretch in terms of buying into a country club. And for me, some of the advantages of buying into a country club, not all country clubs are the same in terms of why I would buy there. Some of the ones that have builders programs make them more desirable to buy in there.
Sure. Okay, so we'll focus in on that a little bit. Another thing that we discussed was the amount of times you could turn over the same money.
Correct.
So you're hoping to do within, what were the words you used? Was it the community? You wanted to turn it over 3 times in a year? Just tell us about that.
So I tried to work on lower margins, and for me to do that, I have to flip a property use the same money 2 or 3 times a year.
Okay.
So I tried to get into something where I'm not going too heavy, and I'm able to get a return on that quickly. So if I buy like a condo, I can turn it over in 6 weeks from buying it into finishing it in terms of the work, and then selling it within 6 months or 4 months. I mean, great 4 months, but 6 months is kind of the time way. So I'm flipping my money twice a year.
Hold on, 6 months or 6 weeks? Or that was a condo?
No, the work itself is 6 weeks, but the by the time you put it back on the market and stage it and everything else, it's usually 4 to 6 months that you can actually flip the property and take it out of your name.
Yeah. Okay, so 4 to 6 months. So you're doing it twice in a year.
Twice to 3 times, if I get lucky.
If you get lucky.
Yeah.
That's really good. And again, without telling us what you make, what kind of returns are you seeing, or by percentage over the quarter? Can we talk about that, or am I getting too?
It depends.
I could edit this.
I won't buy anything unless I'm looking at a 20% margin. So I have there's rules that you can look up on the internet. Usually I use the 70% rule when I'm looking at stuff.
And what's the 70% rule?
So I take the end price that I can get. That's why I was saying that the end price is so important. So if I can sell a property for $200,000, I take 70% of that, which is $140,000, and then whatever I have to put into it. So if I have to put in $30,000, I deduct that, and then I can't buy that thing any more than $110,000. Buy that unit for $110,000.
I see.
It's a standard 70% rule. I mean, you can find it on the internet anywhere else.
Sure. No.
And it seems to work. I mean, I try to get way lower than that. I mean, that's like the worst case scenario. If I think it's a good area, a good property, then I'll use that rule. But I'll try to get lower than that.
Okay. So no, that
we're usually working about a 20% margin because by the time you pay the commissions and all this other stuff and the tax stamps and all that. That comes out to be 8%. So you're working on a 20% margin.
20% of the project margin on the project. Annualized, if it's twice in a year, you've got 40% of what's invested.
Correct. But I stay lower, so it's not like I'm buying a $3 million project and I'm getting flipping that twice in a year. So I'm it's on a higher volume but lower margins.
How many projects do you think you'll do in let's say by this time next year, in the next 12 months?
Hopefully 12 to 18.
That's amazing.
Well, I mean, it's all, I try to keep 6 in the stable.
Yeah.
And 6, some of them, those 6, like a project that I have is a house, I count that as 2 because it's bigger than my, just a condo or whatever. So I count that as 2. It depends on how much money I have in. So I try to keep those in this. So they're all at different stages. Like some of them might just be sitting there waiting for my crew to get over there, and some of them might be done, just waiting to be sold. So I tend to have like 6 in the stable. Right now I'm in the buy stage because I only have 4 in the stable.
Sure.
4 or 5.
Sure. So, this is all really good stuff. To the Douglas Elliman agents that are listening here, keep in mind I'm going to be having a cocktail party in New York City in January. The date will be sent out to those that are down here February 18th. I rented the ballroom at St. Andrew's Country Club. Yes, indeed. It's sensational. We are going to have 2 great speakers. One of them is Howard Lauber, the chairman and CEO of Douglas Elliman Real Estate and the Vector Group, as well as Bruce Toll, CEO of Toll Brothers Real Estate. So for those that want to come, the details will be in the show notes. Let me turn the direction. You work with your wife.
Correct.
How's that?
It works out great. We have 2 very distinct skill sets, and it works out great. Sometimes not so great, but most of the time it's great. Some of it is, you're working with your wife,
Yeah.
So she's giving you punch lists, or she's giving you something that doesn't work out so great, but the other times it's great. It's a good recipe for us.
Sure. What vision does she bring to the table that you don't have?
She's the inside person. So she's taking care of following up with orders, following up with vendors, following up with just different small stuff inside. Paperwork, bills, and those type of things, insurances, and all this stuff that is inside work. And I'm more of the big picture, quality control management, and being on site. I'm the one with the builder's license. And have had the experience in terms of actually, like, if we go into a unit, deciding, most of the time, like, it's an architect's just there to draw it up. I've already told them the design because I've been doing it for so long.
Aside from the experience, which obviously is the biggest thing, Do you have an economy of scale that the one or two off flipper doesn't have? You know, if you're doing 18 deals in a year, you're buying a lot of toilets. Are you getting that toilet cheaper than the guy that might want to do this on the weekends, or the agent that said, I'm sick of selling to guys like Steve. He makes all the money. I could do what he does. Talk to me a bit about that.
I am getting discounts. Some of them I'm getting discounts because of buying as a general contractor, buying, because we work with a designer. She has discounts. Also, there's some pretty clever guys out there. I know that one of the guys that I work with basically said, when you're going to Home Depot, you can go online and get it 20% off, and you can even buy that. That's one of my son's side businesses. He sells coupons, that he gets from us, and resells them, and there's a whole eBay site for that. But those little things count.
Of course. If you're looking at the you just said 20% margin, so whatever every dollar saved is huge.
Yes. I
mean that's anyone's basic math. That's easy.
The biggest thing is the vendors, and it's not always the cheapest vendors. I don't always use the cheapest vendors. I find that cheap is expensive, and you're going to have headaches with these guys. I find good guys and keep them.
For the agent or anyone that's listening here that's saying, yeah, I'd like to get into flipping, the buyer's luxury is your cost. The buyer that when you get something it's Sub-Zero or GE profile, obviously the Sub-Zero fridge is going to cost more money. How does one go about striking the balance between what's going to be marketable and fair versus an extravagance? Do you have any thoughts on that?
It depends where. I found that Boston was much more brand conscious. I mean, in terms of even like the faucets, they had to be strictly Hans Grohe or Roll or whatever it was. Because I did a lot of high end houses up there. The last house I sold there was for 3.6. So. In particular communities, and they had to have all those bells and whistles in the brand names. I find down here it's not so much brand. There's some brand names, but most of it is whether it looks good or not. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of good brands out there that have the nice design but don't have the big huge name and the big huge price.
Sure. Where if I were to start flipping a house tomorrow, where would you suggest I spend my money?
Bathrooms and kitchens, like everyone else would tell you.
Yeah. Okay. So you sound like a realtor.
Yeah. I mean that's really where it's at, the bathrooms and kitchens. But for me, I really like views. I've lived on the water for the last 20 years. So for me, living on some sort of piece of water is crucial. I really like views, and views are important, and also how it's viewed. So, like, I really like when I buy a property that when you walk in, you say, "Wow, look at that view." I've opened up things so that you could see, like, right through the house, so you can see out the back and see a view. But also, there's defects in houses. Like if you're renovating, and I'm pretty much a renovator because anyone can do a knockdown. So I specialize in renovations. Okay. And a lot of people don't like them because there's a lot of unknowns when you open up the walls. But that's the challenge that I like, and that's what I've been doing, and that's what I'm professional at. Also, for me, when you're talking about flipping houses, it's a lot quicker of a flip. So if the house is already there and you can do some cosmetic changes, the permitting and the other stuff doesn't delay you. If you're knocking down a house, the margins might be better. Like even here at St. Andrews, a lot of guys are coming in, buying the house, knocking it down, and building a big monstrosity, and they have a lot of margins on them. But it's a 2-year project.
Sure.
Have you seen any houses go up here quicker than 2 years?
It's around that, sometimes less. But it brings me to the next question with this. Yes, usually you're right. 2 years seems to be the time frame, and then if you're caught out of season, where there's all kinds of reasons, like you're coming out of the ground or you're being developed right in season. At what point do you decide to start marketing that? Do you ever take renderings and get it up on the MLS and say, okay, this is to be completed April 2020, come by? Is that ever your thing?
Nah, that's not my game. Because I've pre-sold a house, and it was a nightmare.
You could curse if you want. We're grown-ups here.
Yeah, no, it was a nightmare. The guy was a complete ass, and nickel and diming you. I just have a horror story, and so I've never really done that because of that horror story. It's like either I'm gonna build it to spec. You either like it or you don't like it. If you want to come in there and change things afterwards, or ask me to change things as part of your offer, then I'll do that. But I don't typically want someone coming in, and it is enticing. And every time, because there's a buyer right there, and it's very enticing because then you're sold it and this and that. But it just doesn't seem worth it sometimes.
What's the fastest time from the day that it went onto the market that you got something under contract?
Most of my stuff goes right away.
Right away, within.
Even I did one here at the Oaks. I did a foreclosure here at the Oaks. I put it in, cleaned it up, fixed it up, and the first weekend that my wife had it on, it was gone. But having said that, it was all it was priced correctly.
Okay, so explain to the agents what price correctly means to you.
Price correctly means to me what the market is, and take off a little bit under that. So if I can give it a little bit of a discount, it doesn't have to be much, but a little bit under market, so that you create that buzz and someone's going to come in and buy right away.
You ever have bidding wars?
I have, yeah.
Even
my house in Boston before we left, we priced it probably $125,000 under market, and we got in bidding war well over that amount because of that.
It's genius, and I'll say this, something that you might not know: 35% of the homes listed on the multiple listing service in Palm Beach County, and I think agents should hear this as well, expire unsold. 35%, that's more than a third. So that's an enormous number, and it always frustrates me because, like anyone else, I've had listings like this because we are slaves to what our clients tell us to do. And I am a soldier, I will do it. But they list it with you for 6 months, a year, whatever period of time it is, and then it comes off, and the next guy that comes in gets the listing, prices it where you thought it should be in the first place, it sells it in a month, and this guy's great, and Edmund sucks. Yeah. And that's it. So to hear you say this professionally, I would invite agents to really use this quote to their clients, because this is something you're a seller.
But Ed also, and I've been around a while, so I know that sometimes you price it high and you come down, and the market's gone lower than you. So where you said from the beginning to be priced, now you have to go lower and you're chasing the market down. I've seen that happen.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
every time you lower the price, you're still above the market.
Well,
and I think that's a mistake. I think that you really need to price it right from the get-go.
Yeah.
And it will sell. I don't think you can ever underprice a property.
Okay.
I'm a firm believer in that. And
Well, hold on. Let's slow down a second. What do you mean you can't underprice a property? So you can't be so low that you end up hurting yourself? Explain what you mean by that.
I found that in any market, if you price the property too low, the market will tell you what the property is worth. So I had a broker that came up to me and said, you found me a house, and he said, I know you're into this thing. How much, what's your break-even point? I want to work with that. And I was like, it doesn't really matter to, whether I'm making money or losing money. I want to sell the property at what the property's worth. And so if you price it too low, you'll get over asking price, and the market will tell you what the property's worth. Mm-hmm. So that's why I'm saying I don't think you can ever price the property too low. Now, it might be a timing thing, like if there's no one down there, like if you put a property in St. Andrews too low in the middle of August when no one's looking at the thing, yes, then you can price it too low. But I'm saying, like, even in August, you price it low, someone's going to see that a bargain and be able to pick it up and at least, get you some offers and at least get some movement towards that, and you're probably going to get a decent price for it. You get over or at what you're asking for.
Sure. It's well, look, we see the same mistakes made over and over again. The difference between you and a residential owner, the guy who lives in the house, is the emotions. You
Correct.
have
I have
no
emotion.
Yeah. So somebody walks in and says your baby's ugly. It's fine. It's an opinion. Okay. Well, okay. Now I saw audience. You can't see his reaction. He kind of grimaced a little bit. I'll never say your baby's ugly.
Well, I mean, I do take pride in the properties that I develop. So,
Sure.
So when you say my baby's ugly, then I do take offense.
Yeah. No. Okay. Duly noted. So agents, if you ever do business with Steve Fishman, never tell him his baby's ugly. But okay, what else? What else do you want people to know? We've only got a couple minutes left here. This has been a lot of fun.
I think that flipping is, I tend to make it look easy because I've been doing it for so long. It's like anything else, There's a learning curve. I mean, I went into a condo yesterday, and the guys did a nice job. I guess they were builders or whatever. They did a nice job, but they had a walk-in shower, and they put a 6-foot door on it. So you're gonna have to crouch down to get into the shower stall. And they did it because they could just get it off the shelf from Home Depot instead of paying another $300 to have a custom built shower with glass.
Stupid. Yeah.
And those type of things. And this is the main thing that I keep, like when I'm working with my wife, and I keep telling her, people might not recognize that when they buy in the house consciously. Subconsciously it registers, and they say, no, there's reason why I'm not going to buy that house. And that happens a lot with mold. It happens a lot with different smells, different things. It might not register why they don't like that house, but they don't like that house and they're not buying it. So when a house sits there, there's a reason. And that's where I get my best bargains, is when there's mold and things like that. Simple things that I can fix, but that's why the house isn't selling.
There's a house right by your house. I know to the audience, I know one of the job sites that Steve's on, and there's a house right near you that was flipped, and the shower in the master is tiny. It's a tiny shower. I mean, when I mean tiny, I mean I'm a big man, but tiny, like my 14-year-old petite daughter would have a hard time in that shower. And ultimately it was sold, but I know what held it back. I had another listing here at St. Andrews where it was listed for years, and I was one of the lucky later agents, but I still had it for a couple of years as a listing. And I said to the owner, look, I've asked you this before. Why don't we make the bedroom slightly smaller and make the closet bigger? Because everybody here, put a bathtub in there because women want baths in their master baths, and let's make the closet a little bit bigger because this room is big enough. And 3 months later, we got it under contract. So there are certain things that could be done, and it's great to see. I think that people should meet guys like you and walk through and see what is selling today. I've had some real issues where people have to have what they want and nobody else wants it after the fact.
And to be honest with you, the reverse goes true too. I think a lot of builders and developers don't listen to brokers enough of what people want, and they haven't done their homework enough.
Yeah.
So I mean, I know that sometimes even dealing with a broker, they make a lot of suggestions, and you're just like, there's no way I'm going to get my money back if I do that stuff. But you get it. And there's some stuff that they say, you know what, that makes sense. I'm going to do that.
That's great. That's great. Well, Steve, it has been great having you here. Definitely, I'd love to get you back when we do some other events in the future. I hope you can make it to my conference in February 18th at St. Andrews Country Club. And again, if you think you'd be great for the show, do drop me an email, edmund.bogan@elman.com. If you want to make some comments, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll see all of you next week for another episode of Making a Smarter Agent. thank you for listening to Making a Smarter Agent. Do me a favor. If you liked Making a Smarter Agent, please go to Apple Podcasts or any of the podcast services you might be listening through and give me 5 stars. I look forward to seeing you next time. And remember, connect with Rain Nation, that's RAIGNATION, on Facebook. It's part think tank, part group therapy for realtors, all coaching, and it's affordable. Please tune in again next week to listen to another exciting episode of Making a Smarter Agent.